On January 31, 1945, Allied forces from the United States 8th Army landed on the beaches of the western Batangas town of Nasugbu. In United States Army planning, the landing was called Operation Mike 6. The 8th Army was under the command of General Robert Eichelberger. This landing of American forces in Nasugbu has been obscured in history by the landing of a larger Allied force in Lingayen, Pangasinan earlier in the month, on January 9th. It was from Lingayen that forces of the United States would drive south through the plains of central Luzon to subsequently liberate the capital city of Manila. This force was primarily the United States 6th Army under the command of General Walter Kruger. The initial landing was just short of 68,000 troops. Subsequent reinforcements brought the total force to more than 200,000 men. The landing of the 8th Army was initially in support of the fighting in Manila, which the 6th Army had reached early in February 1945. From Nasugbu, according to the plan, if possible, the troops that were landed to head north to Manila to support the 6th Army. General Eichelberger had initially planned the Nasugbu landing as a reconnaissance in force. This meant sending a relatively large army forward to provoke a response from the enemy. Before the Nasugbu landing, the civilian population of the town was asked to retreat to the mountains and hills adjacent to the town proper. This was to ensure their safety from friendly fire. The landing force consisted of forces which had sailed from the Allied footholds in Leyte and San Jose in southern Mindoro. Most of the troops were from the United States Army's 11th Airborne Division, under the command of General Joseph May Swing. The landing was preceded by an hour of bombardment from United States Navy warships positioned offshore. Partly due to luck and partly due to planning, the American forces would land on the beaches of Nasugbu virtually unopposed. This was because Col Masatoshi Fujishige of the Imperial Japanese Army, upon whose shoulders the defense of the area south of Manila had been entrusted by the Shinbu group of the Japanese Army, had placed his defenses more in Tagaytay and some even closer to Batangas Bay. This was not necessarily foolhardy, since the Americans, after securing Leyte, had positioned themselves in Mindoro, an island directly to the south, as everyone knows, of Batangas Bay. Unfortunately for Fujishige, Nasugbu itself was defended roughly by only 100 men. By early afternoon, because of the light resistance, American troops were already able to march into the town center of Nasugbu. One report said, when the 188th Parachute Infantry Regiment entered the town of Nasugbu, they were met by jubilant Filipinos and tumultuous cheers. Filipino guerrillas under the command of then-Major J.D. Vanderpool also came out of hiding to assist the landing party unload supplies and equipment from the U.S. Navy ships. General Robert Eichelberger, commander of the American troops, wanted the entire division assembled on Tagaytay Ridge by dusk on 2nd of February. However, the advance of American troops was delayed by well-positioned Japanese defenders on both Mount Cariliao and Mount Batulao. The Nasugbu landing is less talked about than the landing at Lingayen Gulf, but it was nonetheless significant in the way the war was fought in subsequent months in the Philippines. For one, the presence of American troops in Nasugbu and Tagaytay kept Japanese forces south of Manila preoccupied. This, in turn, prevented them from being redeployed north to reinforce other Japanese forces, which had been tasked with resisting the advance of the United States 6th Army south to Manila from Lingayen. After the initial hiccups in Tagaytay, American troops, reinforced by the 11th Airborne Division troops who parachuted onto the ridge from Mindoro, would eventually overcome Japanese defenses. Once this was accomplished, the Americans could rush northwards to Manila to support the efforts of the 6th Army. Most significantly, or at least from the viewpoint of Batangueños, the Nasugbu landing was the foothold from where the Americans would also launch campaigns to liberate the province after the completion of the liberation of Manila. From Nasugbu, American forces would clear the so-called Lipa Corridor. In military terms, a mobility corridor is an area through which troops and equipment can be channeled. American military planners considered the Lipa Corridor, which was bounded by Taal Lake to the west and by Mounts Makiling and Malapunyo to the east, vital to operations in South Luzon. From Nasugbu, members of the 158th Regimental Combat Team, which had been temporarily attached to the 8th Army, would clear Batangas and Balayan bays and also eventually gain control of the Lipa Corridor's southern end. Meanwhile, the 11th Airborne Division would strike from the north and northeast to complete a two-pronged encirclement of the Japanese in Batangas. The Americans would encounter fierce resistance from the Japanese at Mount Macolod, locally known as Mount Makulo, where most of Fujishige's forces were concentrated. They would eventually break through and move on to Lipa, where they captured a vital airfield that would one day become Fernando Air Base. From then on, it was a matter of time before Japanese resistance was broken. And this finally happened on the 1st of May at Mount Malapunyo, a mountain that divides Lipa from San Antonio in Quezon. So, although smaller in scale than the Lingayen landing, the Nasugbu landing had more to do with the liberation of the province of Batangas, which had been absorbing much of the brutality of the Japanese soldiers since the beginning of 1945. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into World War II history. If you found this story as fascinating, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to our channel for more stories that bring the past to life. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you won't miss our next video. We'll see you in the next one.